My name is Addie of Well Loved Clothing, and I am so excited. So basically, last week when I posted my thrift flip, it felt so good to get back on my sewing machine and just create again and update some pieces. I've worn all of those pieces a million times since, and so I thought it would be fun to kind of continue some updating and maybe do like a made by me May sort of thing. So we are going to do some more thrift flips today, and I'm so excited because I've had these pieces in my closet once again for quite a while, just waiting to be updated. So today's episode of Thrift Flip is basically dyeing and bleaching clothing. So I have this somewhat neutral pile, which now I'm realizing that I kind of went with the color palette today, but it's somewhat neutral, and I just want to make these a little more fitted to my everyday style with some colors, and a couple of them do need some mending, and I'm going to change the style of one of them, and so I'll show you the before, and then the whole dyeing, updating process, and then the after. So I'll show you the before of these pieces and kind of my inspiration slash thought process for what I wanted to update these into, and then we will go through the process of it and show you the after of these amazing pieces. So let's get started by thrift flipping some of these pieces. Let's do it! Okay, for flip number one today, I am going to flip this amazing canvasy dress. So I love this dress. I love the fit of it. It's so casual and chill, but just has a lot of interesting touches to it, like the length and then this adorable back. I was of course drawn in because the back was so cute, but then the little drawstring waistband and kind of how it sits up higher is just adorable. But the color is just not what I'm feeling. It really feels like a burlap sack kind of dress, but I definitely saw the possibility for some fun and color, and to make this even more interesting with that really cute trendy back. It doesn't have a brand tag in it, so I'm not sure where it's from, but it's adorable. So this was kind of my inspiration for this dress. It does have a little bit of a yellow tint to it, and I wanted to stay with the warm tones because it has that cream base, because if I was to put like a cool tone over it, it wouldn't really come out the color that I want it to, but I think putting like a green over this would be really cute. So I'm super excited to update this one and make it a little funky. I also have to adjust the sleeve because it's just kind of torn. So this is just a great piece that I grabbed because it was torn, but I saw a lot of possibilities to it. So we are going to add some color to this dress. Let's get started. So I'm just going to mend the sleeve on this dress. I think what happened is that someone tried to cut it to see if they could make it longer, and it just, I don't know, isn't rolled anymore. And so I'm matching up the two corners of the neck hole to make sure that my sleeve length will be correct, and then folding it over an inch and then another inch and ironing that down to have some nice crisp edges to match the other sleeve. And then I'm doing two little stitches at both seams, so on the top of the sleeve and the bottom of the sleeve, to make sure that roll stays down. I didn't do a seam around the whole roll because then it wouldn't look rolled, it would look sewn, and I want it to look rolled. So with the sleeve mending done, I can now move on to dyeing this dress. So sorry for the fluorescent lighting, we're moving to my kitchen. But first thing I need to do is make sure that everything is untied so it'll dye evenly. I'm going to use the stovetop method to dye this dress, and so I'm filling up the biggest pot that I have. This is an 8-quart pot, and I'm filling it up as high as I can. Since I want this water to boil, I'm leaving it about 2 inches below the top of the pot just to give it room to bubble, and I'm covering the pot so it'll boil faster. So while I'm waiting for that to get right below boiling, I'm going to dampen this dress. So I want to soak this dress and then wring out the excess water because I don't want it to be dripping, but I do need it to be damp so that my dye will take to this dress very well and evenly. So headed back to the pot, I am following the method that RIT Dye has on their website, and so they say to use a cup of salt for every 3 gallons of water to enhance the color, and 1 teaspoon of dish soap to evenly distribute the color through the garment. Once that's boiling, I turn it down to a low simmer and use my meat thermometer to measure whenever my water gets to 200 degrees. So once it's at 200 degrees and keeps a pretty even kind of chill bubble, I can add my dye. First things first, we gotta shake it up really well, like really shake it. And the typical ratio of dye to water is about 1 bottle for every 3 gallons or for every 2 pounds of fabric. So since this is a little less than 3 gallons of water and I want a less saturated color, and my dress is probably somewhere around 1 pound, I'm just kind of pouring in some dye to see what works best. Oh, this is my favorite little trick for dyeing clothing. So we're taking a piece of paper towel and dipping it into our pot of dye, and that will give you a pretty good estimate of what the color will look like on your garment. So the color that I just dipped is much darker than the color that I want. So I'm going to dump out some of that dye water and put more hot water into it and pretty much continue dipping paper towels into it until it's the color that I want. So once the paper towel comes out close enough to the color that I want, I can add my fabric. Oh, this is always the scariest part. I don't know why, it's just the initial change, but I am fully submerging this dress in as much water as I can, and then you want to set a timer for 10 minutes and stir the garment that whole 10 minutes to make sure that your dye gets distributed through all of the fabric. I don't know about you, but I find this very therapeutic, and I'm already loving the color. So don't get scared when your color maybe looks a little different than you want it in the pot, because it will wash out more later. So once my timer goes off, I have the option to either take it off after the first 10 minutes or leave it up to an hour. I decided to leave it in for another 10 minutes, so I would have 20 minutes total of dyeing, because since I did a more pastel tone, I want it to get super saturated and make sure that it gets to all the spots so it's not splotchy. Just make sure that however long you keep it in the dye bath, you are stirring it, because that is crucial to even dyeing. Oh, we're getting so close and I'm so excited. So once I remove my garment from the dye bath, I am going to use the same pot to do a color fixative that will make sure my color lasts a long time. So I dump the dye bath, rinse out my pot, and then refill it with the same amount of water and set that on the stove to boil. And also don't rinse your garment yet. The color fixative uses a really similar process to dyeing the garment, and so I'm getting the water up to a temperature of 200 degrees once again and shaking up my color fixative and dumping about half the bottle in, based off using 4 ounces for every 3 gallons of water. So once that's all mixed up, I'm adding my dyed fabric to the water, and some of the dye will come out. That's not bad, it's just because it's in water, and that's some of the dye that didn't lock in. For the fixative, I am going to set a timer for 20 minutes and stir this pot for that whole 20 minutes. This will ensure that the fixative gets into every fiber of this cloth and make sure that my color stays vibrant and beautiful all the time. After the 20 minutes, I'm dumping the water and the garment into the sink and rinsing with cold water until the water runs clear. It runs clear pretty quickly because doing the dye fixative gets a lot of that extra dye out, but just make sure that it's running clear before you put it in the wash. So now we're going to put it in the washer with a gentle detergent. I always add a couple of towels that I don't really care about to my wash just to bulk up the load and do a little bit of laundry, and just run it through a regular cycle, through a regular dry cycle, and this piece is done. I cannot believe this dress. This is so cute, and this is the exact color that I wanted, and I can't really believe that it came out so good, but I just think it changes the whole vibe of the dress. It's not so like natural fabric looking, it kind of brings it to now, makes it a little fun, and this is just a perfect summery springy dress, especially with that cute open back. This is the first full piece that I think I've ever dyed like this, and so I learned a lot. There are some little like kind of splotchy places, not super splotchy though, and I kind of like it because it gives it some character, but I will probably use bigger buckets and things for future projects. So I am in love with this. Let's keep on dyeing some pieces. Okay, next thrift flip. This amazing jumpsuit. Y'all are probably thinking, why the heck are you going to dye this? So, long story short with this jumpsuit, I got it a couple of years ago. I wear it all the time. I love it. But I was wearing it one time while we were moving, and I was bleach cleaning some stuff and just didn't think about it. And so it got bleached in some like kind of weird spots, not like cool bleachy spots, but I actually got another one, and I had some ideas for this one to flip, so we are going to finally flip this one today. But as you can see, it's just the most gorgeous rust utilitarian comfy jumpsuit, and I really live in these year round. A jumpsuit is just my favorite piece of clothing, and so this one is of course my favorite, but I want to make it a little more springy. So my idea for this jumpsuit is to do this to it. I would love to have this be a shorter sleeve jumpsuit because I don't really have that many short sleeve jumpsuits. I actually only have one, and it's not this shape at all. But I also wanted to do something fun with bleach, maybe doing like a milk dye kind of look. So I'm probably gonna base bleach it and then do some more bleach over the top. But either way, we're gonna make this really fun and funky, and I'm going to wear this all season long. So let's get started. Okay, kicking this one off, you're probably gonna see a lot of the inside of my sink during this video, but that's where we're doing this whole project. So I'm filling a pot with water again to put on the stove. For doing an all garment bleaching, your water just needs to be kind of warm. It doesn't have to be super hot. So once I get that on the stove, I'm going to wait for it to just kind of simmer and fill up my bucket with just hot tap water. I'm making sure to keep track of how many cups I'm putting in because my bleach to water ratio is based off of cups. I want enough water in the bucket to cover the garment, but I don't want so much that I don't have enough bleach to do the ratio. So my bleach to water ratio is going to be 1 part bleach to 10 parts water. So I have 50 cups of water, which means 5 cups of bleach. So I'm mixing that all together and letting it sit for a second to get all mixed up. While I'm letting that sit, I need to unroll the sleeves and legs for this piece, and then I'm putting it in the sink and getting it pretty damp. For bleaching, you don't have to wring the garment out, so it's okay if it's a little wet, but I still like to squeeze a good bit of the excess water out. So once it's wet, we can take this jumpsuit and put it in our tub with the bleach solution, and I just like to move it around and submerge it and make sure all of that bleach water is getting into all of the crevices of this jumpsuit. So I'm just stirring it around and messing with it, and once I have it where I want it to be, I'm setting a timer for 10 minutes and letting it sit, but coming back every 3 to 4 minutes to give it a little stir. After lightening it to the desired amount, I took it out and wrung out as much of the bleach as I could, put it in a pot to take it inside to make sure I didn't get bleach anywhere. I ran it under cold tap water, and I am going to neutralize the bleach in a moment, but first I wanted to add a couple of just spots and maybe some differentiation in the bleach, so I made a little bleach solution in a cup and used a spray bottle from one of my cleaners in the house and just kind of scrunched it up and sprayed that in just a bunch of different spots. There was really no rhyme or reason to this part. I just wanted to add a little bit of oomph to the bleaching to give it some character. I then dumped the excess bleach and rinsed out my tub because I'm going to use it to neutralize the bleach so that it won't continue to further the bleaching process. So I'm using 1 part hydrogen peroxide to 9 parts water in that same blue tub and submerging my jumpsuit in the mixture, moving it around occasionally to make sure it gets to all the bleach. I let that sit for about 15 minutes and then threw it in the wash and dryer, and this one was done. I am over the moon with this. I really can't believe it. I was getting a little scared of the color for a second because you saw it. It was like way lighter orange, and I actually have another orange jumpsuit, so I was really hoping it would turn out yellow, and it really did not come out this color until it came out of the dryer, which was insane. And I just love it. It's this beautiful buttery canvasy yellow, but my favorite part is that the seams didn't dye, and so they're all like that rusty color still, and the zipper's still that rusty color, so it has some really fun character to it. It's just so cute, but I'm still going back and forth on whether I should make it short sleeved. I love that it's kind of a springy color, so I feel like it should be short sleeved, and I do still want an oversized short sleeve jumpsuit. I'm going back and forth, so let me know in the comments what I should do, but this is just amazing. We're gonna do one more flip, and I'm so excited. This is so much fun. Let's keep going. So the next piece that we are going through today is this gorgeous white dress. So of course I saw a blank slate whenever I picked up this dress, and I have some really high hopes for this one because since it's white, we can do a lot of lighter, kind of softer colors. But as you can see, it's just this beautiful, perfectly trendy right now smocked dress, and I love the 2-tiered kind of gathered ruffles on the bottom because it makes the skirt really full and beautiful. I also love the puffy sleeves on this dress, but that smocked bodice is just my favorite. This was like the perfect find, and I just want it to be a really bright, fun color. So my inspiration for this dress is this kind of vibe. I still want it to be fun and happy and colorful, but still have those romantic touches. So I'm going back and forth on the color that I want to use, but I'm thinking of like a lilac color. But there's also a little hole on the front of this dress that I wanted to mend. Can't wait to get my hands on this. So let's start flipping it. So first up, we're going to mend the little hole. So it's right above one of the tiers where it just kind of pulled apart. And so I was thinking of taking the whole skirt off and just re-tiering it, but that's a lot of work, and I think that we can fix this by just covering the hole. So I'm flipping it inside out, and I just messed with it for a minute to see what would look best, and I ended up using my seam ripper to rip about 2 inches outside of where the actual hole was, because then when I bend in a stitch, it won't look so wonky. So once I had the hole as big as I wanted it to be, I cut off the excess fabric where it had ripped, so I knew what line I was working with as my new stitch edge. So I'm laying it flat and pushing that piece of fabric to the end. I tried to move as little fabric as possible because I don't want it to buckle where the new stitch will be coming in over the old stitch. Once I have it pinned, I'm taking it to my machine and starting my stitch about 1 inch away from the hole that I created. So I'm stitching over the stitch that was already in the dress and continuing it over the part that was ripped to make it look like it's still just a part of the dress. So once I have that straight stitch done, I'm then doing 2 sets of zigzag stitches right along the edge. I'm doing one that is further apart and a wider zigzag, and then one that is closer together and a skinny zigzag, and this just acts as a serged edge so my edges won't fray. So here you can see where I've stitched it up. It's a little bit raised by maybe 1/4 of an inch, but it won't be noticeable once you're actually wearing it. So here it is complete, and I'm going to press it to make sure that it looks flat, but now we can start dyeing this dress. In order to dye this dress, since it's more fabric and I want it to be less splotchy than the green one, I'm going to use a large tub, and then I'm getting every single pot that I own that will hold a substantial amount of water, and I'm going to fill all of those up and bring them all to boiling on the stove. This is pretty similar to the method that I used for the green dress, but since I'm doing it in a bucket, it's a little bit different. So I'm heating all of my water up to boiling, but I want my bucket water to be above 140 degrees. So after rinsing out the bucket, I put it outside on our patio because this might get a little splashy, and I'm letting the boiling water cool down to about 180 degrees before I pour it into the bucket, because honestly, I'm just kind of afraid that it'll melt the plastic. It didn't, and we're okay. After I poured all of my water into my big bucket, I then added the cup of salt and the 2 teaspoons of dish soap into the water and just swirled it around to give it a good mix. I took the temperature of the water one more time to make sure that I was above the 140 and I was still around 165, so we can start adding our dye. I actually looked up some recipes for the dye online because on rit.com they have a bunch of different mixes that you can do based off of what color you're looking for. So I chose this purpley, grayish, blue, lilac color called Lilac Lake, and it told me that I needed these 2 colors and how much to put in there, so I'm just using one of their formula mixes and mixing that into the water. I did go a little eyeball and a little lighter on the dye because I do want this to be a very light color. Once again, similar to the green dress, this really was just eyeballing it. The first batch that I mixed was a little bit too blue. You can kind of see it in the spoon and the sloshing here. So I added a little bit more of the pink and just kind of kept eyeballing it until it looked like the purple that I wanted, and then I used the same technique of dipping the paper towel and just continued that process until I got the color to where I wanted it. I'd like to love you, love you. I dipped a lot of paper towels for this one because I wanted the color to be perfect, so you can see the differentiation between the two based off of how much pink and purple I put in. After getting the dye color where I wanted it, it was a little too saturated, so all you need to do if it's too saturated is to add more water, but I also wanted to switch tubs because the taller tub with the deeper pool would be better for what I was dyeing, so I switched to this smaller blue tub and added some extra water that I had been boiling to get the heat back up and to take away some of that saturation. And once we had the temperature right, I could go ahead and dye my dress. I then went ahead and just set my timer for 20 minutes since I liked how the dye came out on the other dress and I wanted to do longer than 10 minutes, but not the full hour. So I set my timer for 20 minutes and just stirred this dress around while watching some TV on my computer to occupy the time. I also kept accidentally splashing this dye everywhere, and now one of my shoes has purple laces. So once I was done with the dye bath, I took it to the sink and dumped it out and took a second to put 4 more pots of water on the stove for my color fixative, which I'm going to do in the same blue tub, so I rinsed that out too, and then followed the same process of putting all of the hot water in the tub outside, shaking up my color fixative, and just using the rest of the 4 ounces in the bottle, giving that a mix, putting in my dyed fabric, stirring it around, and making sure all of the fabric is submerged, and there's my porter man hanging out right next to me as usual. And after 20 minutes of soaking in the fixative, I dumped it in my sink. I rinsed it with cool water until the water ran clear, then ran it through my washer and dryer, and this gorgeous dress is done! gosh, I am in shock. This is exactly what I wanted from this dress. I'm really kind of impressed with how I got the colors exactly like I wanted it to. The little paper towel trick really helped. And so this is just beautiful. And it's not like super lilac or really electric. It's just a very beautiful muted lavender. And I just think it is so beautiful. And I will wear this honestly all the time. I feel like I'm going to wear all of these pieces all of the time, and that's what I love about this, because a really statement piece with some fun colors is just all I want to wear during warmer months. And so this is a definite staple in my closet now. Oh, one thing that I find super funny though is that the lining of this dress took all of the blue. So this is the lining and it took all of the blue, none of the pink. And I just thought that was really funny how like different fabrics take different dyes. So that is something to note. If you are going to dye your fabric, make sure you note the types of fabric. It is just so beautiful, and I'm so happy that you guys got to thrift flip some more pieces with me today. So thank you so much for joining me and for making some really colorful, fun pieces in my wardrobe. I hope this encourages you to upcycle some of the things you already own and to keep your closet sustainable and fun and expressive. So I will see you next week. You are well loved. Bye!